Today I'm doing a viewer requested video and I'll be forging the classic French Fleur-De-Lys design. He wants to use this motif to build some corner brackets for a cabinet he's working on, and he wanted a demonstration on how to do it. So I always welcome those kind of suggestions. So if you have anything you want done, please send it along. Once again, this is a forging project, so if you're looking for the easy way to do this, you are on the wrong channel. I'm going to be using 1/4x1 for this project, and he's looking for a final dimensions of about 1/8 by 1. So the extra thickness is going to give me the material that I need to spread out to forge the flower. I debated as to whether I should feature this as a blacksmithing for beginners video or not, and I decided to go ahead with it because it really is a good introduction to show you how fullering can be used to move metal to get you to a specific place. I mean, we're all familiar with drawing down and cross peening to make something a little wider or a little longer, but with this you need to push metal around to get it to a specific location. And as you'll see in a few minutes, 90% of this design is achieved solely through careful hammering and cross peening. So I think it's important to establish that train of thought fairly early so that you can apply it to other projects you're working on. So while I was yakking away in the background, I started hammering the end of the bar to a point, and I thinned down that edge because the very tip of the flower really doesn't need to spread out much more than I have it right here. So I don't need a lot of material there, so I pushed it back into the bar so I can use it somewhere else. The next thing I need to do is start sectioning off the side petals of the flower. So I'm going to be using a very wide blunt fuller to start defining where those petals are going to be located. And I'm using a hand fuller because that gives me the control that I need to section off those two petals. This isn't something you can do with the cross peen of the hammer. So what I'm doing here is I'm driving in the fuller roughly along the outline of the center petal of the flower. And what that's doing is it's driving the material towards the outside edge of the bar. So by thinning down that one specific area, I'm moving metal from the inside of the bar to the outside edge of the bar where I need it to forge the two side petals. And now you can see how that shoulder is going to allow me to come in with the cross peen and drag that material off to the side. Now this shape might be a little confusing at this point because it does look like one big solid mass, but there are actual thin areas where I'm about to put the chisel. And by separating off those areas from the main petal, I'm going to be able to continue moving those two petals off to the side. Again, this exercise is about moving metal around to define a shape, not just creating a big blob of metal and cutting out what you need. It might seem like a big waste of time to the uninitiated, but this is the traditional way that blacksmiths showed their expertise and their mastery over the metal. They didn't spend hours grinding and filing, they forged things to shape. So here I have the masses for the upper part of the flower pretty well defined. So I'm going to be creating an offset that's going to leave me the material that I need for the lower half of the flower and give me a way of transitioning back down to the final bar thickness. Now the bottom end of the petals isn't as pronounced as the upper end of the petals, so I'm just hammering right on that transition to pull out a little bit of material that I'm going to be able to use to define those petals. And then I'll just take a couple of heats to clean everything up. And here I've drawn on the basic outline with a Sharpie. I did take a few minutes with the grinder to try to rough out some of the shape, but it would have been just as easy to leave it and chisel it off the way I'm going to be doing here in a second. To cut out the shape, I'm just going to follow the outline with a cold chisel and break off the pieces the same way I do everything else. It's a little bit heavier than sheet metal, but the process is exactly the same. I'm not going to be able to clamp this in the vise very well because the bar thickness varies quite a bit. So I'm using a softwood block as a backer, and that's just going to compress in and take up any of the irregularities so I can have a firm grip while I'm filing or chiseling, whatever I'm doing. And from this point on, it's pretty standard practice. I'll chisel away as much as I can because I can sharpen chisels and I can't sharpen files, but a lot of it does need to be done with a file, so you just have to go ahead and do that. The final shaping of the piece is done back in the forge. I'm going to be incising some lines onto the surface of the flower to give it a little bit of three-dimensionality. The first fuller that I'm going to use is this very blunt side cutting fuller. I'm not even sure what it's called. But basically what it does is it cuts a sharp line on one side and the bevel edge pushes the metal down on the other side of the line, and it gives it the illusion of being three-dimensional, even though everything is basically staying on the same plane. I'm setting up the hole fast to keep everything in place because I want to be able to concentrate on scribing the line. The anvil is going to suck the heat out of the metal very quickly because it's being pressed hard up against the anvil face, but that's okay. I don't need to scribe a very deep line here. I just want to define that center strap of the flower. And of course the same thing gets done to the other side of the strap. Next I'm going to be incising some lines that are going to define the three petals of the flower. I'm using a very thin fuller for this. I just want some very soft lines to define the shape of the flower. And here I'm just taking another heat to try to join up all those jagged edges together into one smooth line. And the final step in the process is to take a round-faced hammer and go over the entire piece and give it a very consistent hammer texture. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you're interested in supporting this channel and you can spare $2.50 every month, click on the Patreon logo at the bottom of the screen. I'd really like to be able to expand the content of this channel and turn it into the best resource for anyone wanting to learn traditional crafts, but I need your help to get there. Thank you.